This episode is brought to you by Vital Farms. Isn't it bullshit to have to question where your food comes from? At Vital Farms, you can trace your pasture-raised eggs all the way back to the source, the pasture. On the side of each pasture-raised carton of eggs, you'll find the name of the farm where your eggs were laid. And when you look the farm up on their website, you'll get a peek at all the sunshine, fresh air, and open space the hens enjoy. Learn more and find out where to buy them at vitalfarms.com. Vital Farms, keeping it bullshit-free.
'Tis the season to shine with H&M. Discover the holiday collection and find fashionable pieces for your wardrobe or for under the tree. Get inspired and dazzle with this year's glam. From tuxedo styles, bow detailed pieces, impressive prints, and more. From unforgettable looks to unforgettable gifts. With fashion finds to home decor, find it all at H&M. Treat your loved ones and yourself this season. Shop in-store or at hm.com.
This episode is brought to you by Klaviyo, the platform that powers smarter digital relationships. With Klaviyo, you can activate all your customer data in real time, connect seamlessly with your customers across all channels, guide your marketing strategy with AI-powered insights, recommendations, and automated assistance, deliver experiences that feel individually designed at scale, and grow your business faster. Power smarter digital relationships with Klaviyo. Learn more at klaviyo.com/Spotify. That's KLAVIYO.com/Spotify.
LinkedIn presents.
Welcome to the Human Capital Innovations Podcast. We're your source for personal, professional, and organizational growth and development, where we share original research, explore industry trends, and interview executives and thought leaders from across the globe. We hope you join us often for practitioner-oriented content around all things related to leadership, HR, talent management, organizational development, and change management. Maximize your personal and organizational potential with Human Capital Innovations Podcast. Do you enjoy the Human Capital Innovations Podcast? Enjoy ad-free listening by going to the Patreon page, and please consider contributing even at the producer or sponsorship level. And please leave a review. Thank you for your support. Welcome to the Human Capital Innovations Podcast. In this HCI podcast episode, I talk with Christine Valente about how talent demands change as businesses face talent shortages. Christine Valente, welcome to the Human Capital Innovations Podcast.
Thank you. Thanks for having me.
It is a pleasure to be with you. We've been preparing for this for a while, and I'm excited to be able to sit down and have a nice conversation about how talent demands change as businesses face talent shortages. We are in an interesting time, and there's really a lot to discuss and unpack here. So I'm excited to learn from you and hear your perspective with all the expertise that you bring to the table. As we get started, I wanted to share your bio with everybody. Christine Valente, Vice President of Delivery and Operations for Meridian Technologies, has more than 15 years of experience in the technology workforce solutions space. As a dynamic transformational leader, she has earned a reputation in the industry for building high-focused, client-centric sales and delivery teams that drive growth through innovation and results-driven solutions delivery. What a wonderful background you have. Anything else you would like to highlight for me or the audience by way of your background or personal context before we dive on in?
Not really, other than the fact that I am just really passionate about what it is that I do every day. I am a working mother of 3, and so I spend actually more time working than I do with my family. So I believe it's really important to be passionate about what it is that you do each day. And so I thank you, John, for having me today to talk about these topics.
Yeah, well, wonderful. Well, let's dive right on in and frame up for us in your mind, from your perspective, how talent demands change as businesses are facing talent shortages. So we talk about the Great Resignation. We talk about quiet quitting. We talk about the looming recession, and there are already talent shortages before all of that, right? We faced it in certain industries and sectors for a long time. So all of that's already been present. We're layering on all these other things. What does that mean for the changing nature of talent and what organizations need?
Yeah, so that's a great question. I think that, it is an interesting time. Things are absolutely changing. Our business is actually 99% technology. So in that segment specifically, again, I think it really is very specific to the area in which we're talking about. But technology, I think we're still very much in a position where there is talent shortages. Specific skill sets are still very difficult to find. So in that domain specifically, I think that there really hasn't been much change over the course of the last few years. In there needs to be flexibility. We need to be very mindful of our target market per se when we're talking about talent. Again, very industry specific. If we talk about other areas, that may not be the case, and there might be a little bit of a shift there. But again, as it relates to technology, I think that the talent shortage is still a real thing, and the candidate pool still does have, a very heavily weighted advantage there still. Oh, you're
And how
muted.
does that, how does that fit with, all the tech layoffs going on right now? So hundreds of thousands of people, in some cases, 10+% of the workforce at certain tech companies have been laid off in recent months. Yet, you're talking about in the technology space that there's still shortages. How does that mesh with the current labor force realities and the skills shortages?
Yeah, so I think that again, similar to domain specific, I think it's also skill set specific. So there are still areas in which clients are demanding and needing specific talent skill sets. So data analytics, cloud computing, security, are hot topics, AI, machine learning. I mean, there are areas in which they are making investments, but at the same time, they're maybe not hiring as much in testing, for example. So I do think that is very specific to labor category, to skill set. Again, depending on how you're aligned as a business to your customer, I think that you're feeling different effects.
So let's talk a little bit about compensation and other types of benefits that companies could be considering. So we often talk about compensation first and foremost, but I like to think about it in terms of total compensation. So salary or wage is one piece of the total compensation puzzle. And there's a lot in any type of benefit. It could be monetary, non-monetary types of benefits I would consider to be part of the compensation framework for an organization and part of the strategy. What are you seeing in terms of what companies are considering or should be considering to offer to attract and retain top talent, whether it's, again, the traditional compensation types of packages or other types of benefits?
Yeah, so I think that what we're seeing right now, ever since, COVID has happened and it's changed the mindset of so many people, I think first and foremost, top of mind is flexibility. So outside of the traditional compensation and earning potential and the different ways that you can achieve that total comp as you described, I think the flexibility that you can provide to someone sometimes supersedes an additional $10,000 in comp or bonus. Is it PTO? I mean, there's unlimited PTO that some companies are offering, which is much more valuable than $10,000 to some. So it really is, listening to your target market, your prospect, and trying to determine what is most important to them and what are you willing to give, right? So again, if you're in a role that you cannot have a fully work from home employee and that is a requirement, well, then you have to draw the line, right? You don't believe that your job can be done in that capacity. Now, if you have the opposite, which is you have to, you can afford that flexibility, then by all means, do so. And it could save you money, right? You could give that ability and it could save you money, certainly. I do think that people are money driven depending on the person that you're talking to. So when that is a factor, then there are additional things that you can do. outside of just a bonus, tying it to performance, giving additional compensation or, potentially equity, depending on the size of the firm. I think that those are things that people are doing to get a little more creative. But again, it's all based on, what you can do and how far you can reach, and also what's important to the prospect.
Yeah. And you highlighted a really important issue, and that is just the preferences and how they're changing around face-to-face work, remote work, hybrid work. And many employers have been trying to get their people to come back to the office in person after several years of this pandemic environment where so many people were forced to go virtual.
Right.
Now, it does depend, right? I can't say what is better for an organization right off the bat. I can't say hybrid's the way to go or virtual or face-to-face. And it depends on the organization, it depends on their values, it depends on their industry, the products and services that they're providing, the types of roles you're talking about. There's so many things that it depends on. Yet this is a pattern that you see, that many organizations are trying to get their people to come back into work, and there's resistance. If there wasn't resistance, it wouldn't even be a big deal. Like, it wouldn't be in the news and everyone would just be going back to work, right? Yet you have a significant portion of the labor force that says, I've learned to really enjoy the flexibility of either virtual or hybrid work. I don't want to be back in the office full time. And they're not willing to do it. And so they're jumping ship and going to other opportunities, or trying out, hanging their own shingle, trying out the gig economy or whatever. What are you seeing, and how organizations are trying to address this to find that balance to what the needs are of the organization and what the demands are of the labor force?
Yeah. So again, I think the other side of the pendulum is that there are people that are unhappy working from home, right? That feel disconnected, that want office time, that want to be connected, that want water cooler conversation. So it really is such a fine line of making people happy and giving them that flexibility, but also staying true to keeping a good culture, showing your employees you care. Again, it's so compartmentalized our day as far as those interactions. Anytime you bring someone new on board, it takes much more time to get them acclimated into your environment. So I don't know that I addressed the question that you just said, but I did have that additional thought on, it not being just one-sided, that it's also the other side too that we're worrying about.
Sure. And that's a really good point, because sometimes we make the assumption that it's only one direction, that employees want to be virtual and employers want them to be in person. And that's not always the case. And in fact, sometimes it's the opposite. Sometimes organizations are saying, no, there's a lot of benefits to us keeping you virtual. We don't want you in the office. Right. And employees are saying, no, I really want to be there. And there's a whole spectrum in between, right? So that is important to note. And it highlights something you said a few minutes back, and that is that you just need to know your people to be able to understand where they're coming from and what they are needing and wanting, and what's going to drive their retention within your organization. Certainly, as you're meeting with candidates, to bring in new people to the organization, that can be part of the conversation as well. But once you have people in the organization, you better continue that dialogue, that open dialogue, to make sure that you're meeting the needs of the current labor force. And we can hem and haw all day about, being frustrated about what employees are demanding versus what we're willing to offer, regardless of what we're talking about, right? We can complain about that, but the reality is we either have to adapt to the labor market, or we're going to not get good people, and we're going to increasingly become irrelevant in the world of work and in our particular industry. So that's something we have to be able to deal with, and ultimately every organization has to feel that out for themselves, based on all the different inputs, that go into making that kind of a decision.
Absolutely. And again, I think understanding your people, building trust with your people through time, I think it gives you the flexibility to go either way and to accommodate them. But again, I think it all starts with understanding, your target and what's important to them, because it does differ, and being flexible, because again, without the ability to be flexible, those that are going really hard and fast and saying, okay, we need everybody here 5 days a week and there's no accommodations, it's just such a hard swing that I think it's hard to adopt. And it's hard, quite frankly, to sell when we're talking to a candidate base when they have two different options, one with a flexible option and one with hard and fast rules. So,
and it just doesn't resonate with a lot of people when you make the argument when you're making that hard swing argument, like we've been remote, now we're bringing everyone back. And then you ask, well, why? Well, because we want you back, because that we'll be able to, be more successful if you're back. And then you ask, well, why? I mean, I was productive at home. I've been working remotely for a couple of years now. And you just ask that why question. And unless you have good arguments for it, it starts to unravel very quickly. And like you said, it comes back to flexibility. And so regardless of where your organization decides to be on the spectrum, if you can build in some flexibility in accommodations for people who are in different situations, that will make a big difference. Even if you're kind of a face-to-face office first organization, people, need to have some level of accommodation for the different types of scenarios they might find themselves in different stages of their life. And if you can be that organization that sees them and recognizes, the holistic person and the demands on their life, and show that you value that, and you acknowledge that, that'll make a difference for people. And ultimately people will decide whether or not they want to be in a virtual first organization or a face-to-face first organization or whatever. But most people aren't extreme in either way. They're kind of happy, ebbing and flowing, as long as there's a good reason for it, and as long as they have flexibility when it's needed, so they can carry out the other aspects of their lives.
Yep, I agree wholeheartedly.
So let's talk about some of the most in-demand skills right now that you see. I know one that you had mentioned as we were preparing for the episode is technology staffing specialist. What is it specifically about that kind of a role and that kind of skill set that's in such high demand right now, and maybe others that come to mind as well?
Yeah. So in our world, we really kind of run the gamut of technology skills, and top of mind is security. So again, when the world shifted to a very remote world, I mean, security has always been a top priority for many companies, but I think exposure has, exponentially grown with everyone working remote and having access to different systems virtually. So I think that really is top of mind as far as in-demand skill sets in technology, data analytics, data visualization, data storytelling. Companies are really trying to get every little bit they can out of every little bit of information that they have. And so in order to do that, they're using data analytics. They're using insights that they're gleaning from their data to make business decisions more so than ever, because they have more data than ever. So I think that will continue to be, top of mind and top priority in a lot of our clients through the year. Outside of security, machine learning, artificial intelligence. I mean, again, those are accelerators in everyone's business. So any way that we can add additional horsepower to growth, those areas are really places where companies will continue to make investments, and we think we will see continued growth in those segments. Outside of that, creative marketing, user experience design, those are areas in which, again, we are constantly trying to improve as an organization, and as our clients try to improve their customer experience to really just gain market share. Again, anything that's tied to return on investment and making more. I think that we'll see some additional investments. And then cloud computing. I mean, everyone's moving to the cloud. So again, I think that's another area that we are seeing, continued growth, and we'll see continued demand.
Yeah. I completely agree. And so then it comes back to, how do you attract and retain top talent in these types of areas? And we could list a whole bunch of other things too. We're focusing in now on a particular kind of subset of the labor market and certain types of skills and certain types of jobs. But regardless of what we're talking about, if we zoom back out a little bit and talk just about attracting and retaining top talent in this current environment where there's skills gaps and it's hard to get good people, any kind of summarize, takeaway advice as we end the episode today that you would give to leaders about what they can be doing within their organizations?
Sure, absolutely. So I think you heard me say it several times today. I think flexibility is top and key in my mind. And when I talk to people, I think that is most important, followed by compensation. Obviously, that is always and will remain a top priority. But again, if given two opportunities or two choices at the end of the day, it will be coming down to the person and what's most important to that particular individual. So really peeling back the onion, really understanding what's important to the prospect or to the candidate that you're pursuing prior to offer, really just getting an understanding, and is a culture, right? And how can you align to that, I think is really important when we're talking about the offer and attracting talent. And then when we talk about retaining talent, it's really all about making sure that you put your money where your mouth is. So anything that you've promised initially, as far as flexibility, as far as compensation, as far as culture, it's not that you just drop someone in your virtual world and you forget about them, but that you actually hold events where you bring your team together. Maybe have a monthly, quarterly trivia game where everyone's connecting. Bring people into an office once a quarter, to bring that connection together, but also understand that they don't want to come into the office 5 days a week, potentially. And how can we accomplish our mission and our job, our role, while still balancing, the things that are important to our people.
Yeah, absolutely. Christine, this has just been a real pleasure. I know at the time I need to let you go here in just a minute, but before we wrap things up for today, I wanted to give you a chance to share with the audience how they can connect with you, find out more about your work, your team, and then give us a final word on the topic for today.
Sure. So you can actually connect with me on LinkedIn. You can find me, Christine Valente. I work again with consulting solutions, specifically Meridian Technologies, which is part of the Consulting Solutions family of companies. Again, I'm super passionate about what I do. I have a wonderful team of people that share the same passion. So I feel very fortunate to be here sharing my thoughts. But again, I think as we move forward into this year and consider the things that are hot skills or hot topics, really consider opening up, casting a wider net, being a little more flexible, considering what's important to the people that you're prospecting and that you're trying to attract from a talent standpoint. And again, really focus on what's important to your current existing teams. Make sure that we're connecting enough in this virtual world, because it's very easy to get stuck into your grind every day and lose sight of what's really important, which is connecting with people.
Amen. That was wonderful, Christine. Thank you so much. It's been a real pleasure. I encourage the audience to reach out, get connected, find out more about what Christine can do for you. And as always, I hope everyone can stay healthy and safe, that you can find meaning and purpose at work each and every day. And I hope you all have a great week. If you enjoy the Human Capital Innovations podcast, enjoy ad-free listening by going to the Patreon page. And please consider contributing even at the producer or sponsorship level. And please leave a review. Thank you for your support. Thanks again for joining us for this episode of the Human Capital Innovations podcast. I hope you stay healthy and safe and that you have a great week.